When you need to build up your team to handle the growing chaos at work, use Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It gives your job post the boost it needs to be seen and helps reach people with the right skills, certifications, and more. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need a hiring hero? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs.
This episode is brought to you by Accenture. When your advertising operations fall out of sync, everything else follows. Spotify and Accenture are working together to reinvent the rhythm of ad sales, using automation, analytics, and smarter workflows to simplify campaign delivery and access better data across the business. The result? Less time spent on operations, more time connecting brands with the moments and fandoms that matter most. Learn more at accenture.com/Spotify.
I had a food truck owner reach out to me that had a private event cancel on the very morning that she was supposed to go out and vend. The reason it was canceled? It was raining. She had already prepped about $400 worth of product, and there was no deposit or weather clause within the contract. Just basically a short text message they turned into an email and said, "Here we go. We are now officially contracted for you to do this event." And the client felt bad, but not bad enough to pay her anything. She didn't have anything in writing to protect herself, so she ended up having to eat the $400 because the rain also prevented her from getting out into selling to the public in general. That's not bad luck. That's a missing policy within a contract. So we're going to talk about that today. Hi, my name is Bill Moore. I'm the Executive Director of the National Street Food Vendors Association, which is a nonprofit dedicated to education, advocacy, and uplifting all food vendors. If you're listening to this when it's released, it's August the 5th, and that means I am in Austin. If you're in Austin or nearby, please head over to ftoexpo.com. Buy yourself some tickets and come see us at the Palmer Event Center. I'll be there until about 4 o'clock today. In any case, what should this vendor have done? Well, the first thing I want you to get into your head is weather is not the problem. I know it feels like the problem when you're standing in the kitchen at 6 in the morning and it starts to rain, or you get that warning on your radar app going, "Hey, there's a storm on the way." The weather's not the problem. The problem is there wasn't a decision made weeks ago before either side of that contract had money or feelings tied up in the event. I'm talking about a small private event where you might be completely blocked off from the public in general, but you still expected to serve a bunch of people from the business or the industry that you're going to set up in front of. So as a cook, you look at the sky in that morning and go, uh-oh. As an operator, I want you to understand it is going to rain on you from time to time. So when you have these opportunities, you have to include what happens if it rains, there's a tornado, there's a hurricane, earthquake, whatever. What happens? Who is responsible for what? If you think about it, weather is a contract and a pricing problem, and both of those things together are wearing that weather costume. If your deposit structure, your cancellation deadlines, and your rain language are clear and fair to both sides, a rained out event is just a hassle. You shrug it off. If those aren't clearly defined, now you have a dispute or a potential dispute, or you have a loss, and it lands during what most likely is your busiest part of the season, exactly when you've got the absolute least patience to handle it. Because your catering contract and a public events vendor agreement are not the same document, and you can't treat them as if they're the same. So the first track is your own private catering and small event contracts. The ones you write, the ones you control every piece. The first, they spell out who decides when the weather is bad enough to cancel. Is it you, the client, or is it a mutual call? Second, it spells out the cutoff time for that decision. Will decide the morning of leaves both sides very anxious and very unprepared. That's not a policy, that's a coin flip with a couple of extra steps. Third, the contract should spell out exactly what happens to the deposit if there is a weather cancellation. And it treats that separately from the client just changing their mind. Most operators end up more generous on weather than they are on a standard cancellation. A reschedule or a rain check instead of a flat no refund policy when it comes to a weather cancellation. That's because weather is really no one's fault. And then burning that relationship over one rain out costs you long-term sales revenue than that little deposit ever would be able to cover. So before I get to sizing the deposit, I want you to hear how the rest of the catering world already handles this. Food trucks aren't the first mobile business to wrestle with weather. It just feels like it. The pattern across the industry is remarkably consistent. A deposit holds the date, period. That way you're not scheduling a second event and the person giving you that deposit can feel confident you're going to show up. That's what a good faith deposit's for. What changes is the refund tier, and that's based on how close to the event the cancellation lands. So for example, 30 days out, they can get a near full refund. Because remember, you've also probably turned down a job or two for that same particular day. So there should be a little bit of a cost if they're 30 days out and say, hey, just kidding, I want to cancel. Cancellation within 2 weeks, for example, it drops to 50%. I keep 50% of the deposit. Cancellation inside a week, you get nothing because you've already committed labor and most likely shopped at that point. So you deserve the money. And that's not arbitrary. It matches what most caterers around the country do based on the calendar. The closer to the date, the more committed the business already is and most likely has spent money in some way, shape, or form. And this is not a small dollar problem. The U.S. catering industry runs over $60 billion a year. You want to get your piece of it. There are industry surveys that find roughly 1 in 4 caterers has taken a real financial hit from a last-minute cancellation or a guest count drop because they had no written agreement covering it. A quarter of the entire industry is getting burned by the same missing clause that our member almost got burned by. If caterers with decades of standard practice behind them are getting caught without stuff in writing, there's a whole bunch of food trucks that don't have stuff in writing either. Now, how do you size your own deposit? This is where most owners get it backwards. They pick a round number that feels reasonable. $100. Sounds fair. Except that's just a guess. Your deposit is not a booking fee, so stop calling it that. It's insurance you're selling yourself, just like any other insurance policy. It only works if it's priced to cover the potential loss. That's what a deposit is, covering a potential loss. So go look at the last few private events you've done. Go look at the last few caterings you've done. Figure out what you actually spend on product the week before the booking. If that number runs $400 and your deposit's a flat $100, your deposit isn't doing the job. Because that means you're pulling out $400 or $300 more dollars just to go buy food. Still haven't got paid yet. That's a gesture. That's not a safeguard. Most operators that I talk to land somewhere between 25 and 50% of the total of the contract. Now, here's what I recommend. You want me to hold it? I need 25% right now today. That's a substantial amount when you consider that the average catering is going to be around $2,500. So if you have $2,500 and you get 25% of it down, that's a little over $600. It's $625 to be exact. So $625 is buying your food. Pays for the food. If they cancel too close, you've already got the money to pay for the food that you have already bought. I also recommend that a certain number of days before the event, the remainder becomes due. You do not want to be a bill collector the day of a catering or a small private event. You do not want to collect that money after the fact because you're not going to get it. Remember, if you did that 25% deposit, all you've done is pay for the food. You haven't paid for the labor that you put into it, either your labor or your employee's labor. So do you want to wait even 3 to 5 days before you get paid? So think through the process. Deposit 25%, full amount due a certain number of days ahead. Now let's talk about public events where you're the vendor and you aren't able to write the contract. You pull up an agreement from a farmer's market or a city festival and you'll see the same language over and over. The event happens rain or shine. No refunds due to weather. Something along those lines. Some go farther. You cancel after signing for any reason, you get nothing back. That's standard policy. Lots and lots of venues and lots of events do that. It means the organizer is carrying none of the weather risk. You are. I'm not telling you that it's wrong. Most organizers are just working for whatever template they've been giving. They're not trying to hurt you, even though lots of food truck owners act like they are. But what you need to know is, before you ever sign it, understand what happens. If it rains, what happens? Will it be canceled? Will it be rescheduled? Because you ain't getting your money back in most cases. And sometimes that rescheduling ends up on a date you already committed somewhere else. And that happens way more than it used to. When you consider an outdoor festival between 2023 and 2024, over 80% of them had some type of weather-related disruption. 80%. That pushed cancellation insurance premiums to triple. If you're vending outdoor public events regularly, more of those bookings you're counting on, especially this year, 2026, they carry real weather risk, certainly much more than they did 5 years ago. Now, that's not a reason to stop booking. It's a reason to understand what your participation price is going to be and understand the risk. If you apply for that, you may not get money back. So you want to make this a viable policy for yourself. Write a weather-specific clause into your own contracts. Do not do any event anywhere without some type of contract. If it's a catering, let's just define catering. Catering is one payer, many guests. So one dude is paying for everybody. That's a catering. If you're doing a private event where you do not have access to the public, that could be many payers, many guests, but no guarantee. So weather could impact that because all those people aren't going to stand in the rain or buy your food. So put it in your agreements. It cannot be a verbal, oh, hey, what are we going to do if it rains? Write it down. If you do frequent caterings, look at the average amount of money you're spending on food, and that needs to become the deposit to secure the date. And then work it into where you are fully paid before you ever show up on site. The only thing you should ever collect or bill later would be if you have an event on Saturday and they call you Friday night and say, hey, 10 more people are coming. Can you make sure we got enough food to cover that? And then you would bill them the next morning for those 10 additional plates. Okay, we agreed on $25 a head. I need $250. How are you going to pay? Cash or credit? Don't become a bill collector. Before you accept any public event, read the weather and refund policy so you're not scrambling the day it starts raining. Oh yeah, what'd that contract say? Separate weather cancellations from standard cancellations in your own contract language. A client backing out because the plans changed, kid decided not to get married, is not the same thing as it's raining the weekend their wedding is scheduled. Get your agreement reviewed by an attorney at least once, and not an online downloadable form, an attorney in your area where you vend. Please don't ask AI to do it. AI will put a disclaimer in it saying, this was not written by an attorney. You should have an attorney check it. So I'm just telling you, check it. Weather is something you can't control. Your response to the weather, though, is something you can control. But you got to have good information beforehand. Thank you guys so much for listening to the 10-Minute Food Truck Training Podcast. If you're finding everything helpful that we do, please consider subscribing. If you love what we do, show some support. You can go to Spotify or whatever platform you're on, like, subscribe, follow, whatever your platform asks, please do it. And then go to nsfva.org and join our association today. We got all kinds of job aids there to help you become successful in your food truck venture.